Welcome back to another episode of the Cancer Letter podcast. I am Claire Marie Porter. I'm a reporter at the Cancer Letter. Jacqueline is vacationing in Washington State this week. Hi, Jacqueline. I hope you're having fun.
Mm-hmm. If she's having fun, she's not listening.
That's true. Good point. Well, shout out to Jacqueline.
So never mind.
Yeah, never mind, Jacqueline. We miss you. Hi, Paul. How are you? How are you today?
Fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is a great time to be a journalist.
Yes, it is. So before we dive into the stories, I'm just going to give a little overview of what was in our headlines this past week. So at the top, we featured our monthly podcast, The Directors, for our cover. So this was an interview facilitated by Paul Goldberg with two cancer center directors in rural states. Raymond DuBois, he was the director of the Hollings Cancer Center in Charleston, South Carolina, and Roy Jensen of the University of Kansas Cancer Center. They discussed the importance of COE in rural America, indirect costs, health disparities, among other things. We also featured our good friend Otis Brawley as a discussant on that podcast. We had a roundup of what's going on in politics in the White House, kind of covered the pileup of work growing at NIH due to reductions in federal workforce, bans on meetings, funding freezes, et cetera. We covered the centralization of review, the new list of problematic words to be avoided by government officials in order to avoid being flagged. We covered the withdrawal of Weldon's CDC nomination and a pediatric cancer bill, which was reintroduced before the Senate, the Give Kids a Chance Act, which had previously been cut at the end of last year, and the economic impact of research funding from NIH. We had our weekly column by Kimryn Rathmell on the role that mentorship plays in women's leadership development. We had a guest editorial on CCSG components, reducing the national burden of cancer, which was written by leaders in health disparities research and cancer prevention at MD Anderson, Yale Cancer Center, and University of Colorado Cancer Center. We had a guest ed by William Pao introducing his new book on drug development. So it's been quite a week. And once again, a great time to be a journalist. Yeah, here we are again.
Yeah, we keep saying this. Someday somebody will throw stuff at us. It's actually very good that we are out of reach of our readers who probably are throwing stuff at their screens, like every time anybody says it's a great time to be a journalist, because this is not really a very good time.
Good is maybe the wrong word, but I started grad school in journalism. My first time being a journalist was during the first Trump administration. And when we said it was a good time to start being a journalist, it just meant there was so much to report on. And there's always a second, third day story. So I think that's what I mean when I say it's a good time to be a journalist, is that, there's no digging for stories. They kind of fall into your lap week by week.
I didn't go to J school, but that's exactly what I mean as well.
Yeah.
What really seems to be happening is as they flood the zone, which is really their term for what they're doing, all you can do is just cover what's actually happening. But the day two stories, the ones where you really chew on it and try to understand what actually happens and how it's going to affect your readers and listeners, those stories have to wait. And we've got a very long waiting list of that kind of stories. Now, poor us. But, we're still not getting fired and or deported or anything of the sort. So.
So what were some of your favorite moments or key highlights from this week's issue?
Yeah, it was apropos what I was saying. We have this feature, a standing feature that we internally call the roundup. It means nothing to anybody. That just means a lot of that day one stuff gets put in the same bag because people really want to see all of it in one place. We did the same thing with COVID. So when, you can't just have, you just need to put it all in one place.
Right.
And people do read it. We look at numbers, and the numbers seem to suggest that is the most read piece. Now, this week was strange because there was a theme to the roundup, which was how it's difficult to be a government employee these days, especially for NCI. and NIH. And, these folks are being besieged with offers to retire early, offered packages, and asked to send every week to send a list of 5 things that they did this week. So, but the result of it is that you really have no idea how many people are taking these offers, how many people, just want to just leave, and who is going to be staying behind. Will there be people who are staying behind who are able to process grants and even hit the pay button, which, by the way, is not that straightforward. It's not just push a button. You can't train a smart 12-year-old to do it. It's a whole to do.
Right.
So basically, there's also, of course, a pile-up of applications, meetings not being held, peer review not being conducted, access to Federal Register, which is a requirement for the government to do to do really much of anything. So all of this is not happening. So some say that it seems unlikely that the government will be able to issue all the grants or review all of the grants it's supposed to be reviewing or issuing this year. So what happens if money is not spent? Does it go away permanently? I don't know. I don't think anybody will be able to answer that question. Yeah. So, but some of it is really difficult. Like, for example, what are the 5 things you did this week? Well, why don't we just try it out? Claire, what are the 5 things you did this week? And actually showing me the middle finger right now, since we're on video, is perfectly legitimate, because that's what I would do if somebody asked me.
It's insulting,
Yeah. So
you
what
want
are the 5 things? Yeah, this was a real question.
You were there for all of it.
I know I was, but still, what are the 5 things you did this week? Fast. Answer.
I conducted interviews. I sent a lot of emails. I worked on transcripts. I wrote a lot of words. I did some reporting.
Is it 5 things?
I think so. It felt like 5 things.
I don't know. We'll find out after we listen to this whether it's 5 things. But because 6 things is probably okay, right?
Probably okay. Yeah. Probably. I mean, and all the different components of journalism. I mean, just saying journalism itself is at least 5 things, right?
Oh, at least. Yeah, at least. And as we said, it's a great time to be a journalist. So, I think actually one story that is really interesting going into next week is what happens with Columbia, which is, by the way,
my alma mater.
The most interesting thing with Columbia to me is that among the, $400 million worth of federal grants, contracts, et cetera, that Columbia supposedly lost, is apparently the CCSG. Columbia hasn't been really saying very much. I see discreetly tucked onto front page of the New York Times that they are negotiating, trying to figure out how to keep the grants, what kind of a, quote, corrective action plan to put in place. But the main issue is quote, antisemitism, or making Jewish students feel uncomfortable as they walk through campus, which may have been a real thing, but it has nothing to do with cancer. And the fact that Columbia Cancer Center is very, very important. Can you,
I mean, just kind of for the layperson or those new to cancer like myself, can you explain what CCSGs are and why they might be in peril?
Well, there's another 60 institutions, by the way, that are on the list of that the Trump administration is using.
Not just Ivy Leagues.
Oh, no, not just the Ivy Leagues. A bunch of them. That really every place you can think of. Each of them has a cancer center.
Right.
is the administration, or not each of them, some of them have cancer centers. So is the administration going to go after every place that has a complaint against it and try to shut them down, shut down the cancer centers, shut down other things? I mean, we're not just talking about cancer centers. We're talking about engineering, research, and whatever, a bunch of stuff, agriculture, you name it. So, but you could, in one fell swoop, lose a lot of cancer centers if this continues in this way. Now, if Columbia is able to negotiate its way out, that would tell us that the administration wants some sort of corrective action or mea culpa or what have you. But if Columbia is unable to negotiate its way out, then we know that, at least in some cases, the administration is out to shut down the academic institutions in the United States.
Right.
I certainly hope it's the former, not the latter.
Me too.
And in fact, I think maybe what we should do with Columbia is maybe get you to look into it, because you know who is who, you know what's happening, and maybe you should look into that story. What do you think?
I think you just assigned me a story.
Yeah,
Live.
This is the first time this has happened in the history of the Cancer Letter that the story was assigned live.
Well, considering the podcast is new, that's not saying a whole lot, but
no, it's not. But you can say that there's something extraordinary about the pretty ordinary event.
Yeah.
And it's always fun. People like it.
We should talk about the directors.
We should.
We should. That was fun to listen to. It's a great podcast.
It's always fun. But yeah, this one was a blast. The reason for the directors is, the reason we created it is to highlight the fact that the cancer centers are run by some very cool people who have some very wise things to say. And this is especially important now, as NCI is losing some of its leadership role, and the role of a cancer center director. And there's a whole lot of roles that cancer center directors play. Mm-hmm. One of them is to be a public intellectual.
Right.
And so we invite 2 directors at a time, and I sort of moderate, but these are usually people who do not require the services of a moderator. And then there is a kind of a conversation with a discussant. Mm-hmm. And all of it is really a blast.
Yeah. And what did these 2 directors, they all have something in common, and these 2 are from rural areas?
What we were talking about was actually kind of what we talked about in the previous episode with John Carpton and Rob Wynn, which is the importance of community outreach and engagement as a way of guiding the cancer centers and assessing the impact of cancer centers. Right. This has been a big part of what NCI has demanded in the CCSG applications and renewals. And it basically tells you, are you reaching people? Who is in your catchment area? Are you reaching them, and are you improving their health? Mm-hmm. If you lose that for whatever reason, and I'm one of the people who worry about losing that, then why? Because COE is a 3-letter acronym. And DEI is also a 3-letter acronym. I'm worried that some of these folks who put together the glossaries of, words to watch out for are going to get them confused. Right. These are 2 very different things. Even DEI, really, which is many things.
Right.
You can argue with some of them, but some of it makes all kinds of sense. Yeah. Because there are people who are disadvantaged, who are who need to be, well, actually, both of these things are important to health services research. If health services research ends, well, there will be two things happening. One of them is people will be dying more or doing worse, rather. And the second thing is we won't know about it.
Right.
So
Right.
is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Right.
You're trying to get more people to die. You probably shouldn't necessarily keep track.
Right.
Or maybe you should. I don't know. It's not the kind of, it's a little too grotesque for me.
Yeah. Well, Otis Brawley talked a good bit about the misinformation around DEI, and that's not helping the situation. Gave his own
NCOE.
NCOE. Yeah.
And he made the distinctions and the similarities, and it was very nice to bring it kind of down to the fundamentals, which is one of Dr. Brawley's specialties, bringing things down to the fundamentals so even people like us, journalists, can understand.
Right. Yeah. He says education is an amazing equalizer in terms of cancer death, which is something I've heard him say before, but it's very poignant. Yeah.
Otis speaks for himself, and the best thing to do is just to listen to the whole thing. It's a blast.
Yeah. So what's coming down the pipeline this week?
This is going to be a big week.
Yeah.
Jay Bhattacharya is probably going to step into his job as the NIH director.
Is that confirmation hearing this week?
The confirmation hearing happened last week. This week is he goes before the full Senate.
The full Senate, right.
Yeah. So then, not last week even, it happened the week before last.
Right.
So Bhattacharya actually in his confirmation hearing sounded like, he didn't sound like Elon Musk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There was no chainsaw involved.
Right.
He seemed to say that also that he would like to take a closer look at the issues like indirect costs, which is very important to look at in a measured way. And he said that there would probably be no more staff cuts at NIH. But it's one thing to say things at your Senate confirmation hearing before the committee. It's another thing entirely to do what you have to do to run NIH. But by the way, this is an important distinction, because it's one thing to reform the government, to make changes. It's another thing to actually run an agency. So, Doji and Musk have one function, and Bhattacharya has another function entirely. So, it's expected that pretty soon after Bhattacharya is named, we would see the NCI director, whoever that may be.
Right.
So that also is very important. Who is going to run NCI?
Right.
And one of the things that we're seeing already is of course centralization of functions within NIH,
Right.
and that would include the review function. I'm still trying to figure out whether there is or isn't new chief of staff at NIH. Excuse me.
Yeah.
So, well,
is there anything else we need to talk about? Have we covered everything? All the highlights, key takeaways?
We did. Everything is figured out. Everything is covered. But they keep on flooding the zone and giving us things to do and to love our jobs even more. You do love your job.
I love my job. I do.
Yeah, I do too. It's really, and I'm saying this seriously. This job is a privilege.
Yeah.
For me.
No, me too.
Yep.
Fully agree.
I was hoping to hear that.
Oui.
Yes.
Well, you can listen to the directors, which we mentioned on the Cancer Alert podcast. And thanks for listening to another episode of In the Headlines, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you for joining us on the Cancer Letter podcast, where we explore the stories shaping the future of oncology. For more in-depth reporting and analysis, visit us at cancerletter.com. With over 200 site license subscriptions, you may already have access through your workplace. If you found this episode valuable, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and share. Together, we'll keep the conversation going.
Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and thank you for listening.